Seth Baxter. Seth Baxter's game was never really a game at all. It was revenge, gift-wrapped to look like Jigsaw's work.
Hello, Seth.
After serving a measly 5 years for killing Angelina and walking free on a technicality, Seth probably thought he'd beaten the system. Unfortunately for him, Angelina's brother, Detective Mark Hoffman, had a different kind of justice in mind, one that came with steel, blood, and no chance of survival.
Who cut you in half?
The message was clear. Angelina's death hadn't been paid for, and now he'd face his own trial. His choice? Crush his hands inside 2 waiting vices, or be split in half by a descending pendulum blade. The blade began to swing, its arc growing lower with each pass, slicing the air closer to his belly. Seth screamed, begged, insisting her death was an accident, but the trap had no sympathy to give. At first, he couldn't do it. He tore his hands away, the pain too much. But as the blade loomed inches from him, desperation drowned hesitation. He shoved his hands into the vices, bone cracking, tendons snapping, his screams echoing through the room. He had completed the task. For a flicker of a moment, Seth thought he'd won, thought he'd proven he wanted to live. But Hoffman's little masquerade wasn't designed for survival. The pendulum kept swinging, biting deeper, ripping through flesh and bone until his body spilled open and split in 2. As life drained from him, Seth's eyes caught movement, a figure watching through a peephole. His last words rasped out in disbelief. He had done everything he was told, but the truth was crueler than the blade. Hoffman's trap was unwinnable. The sentence had been decided long before it began. Brenda. Brenda was one of the victims placed in Daniel Rigg's trial. Rigg discovered her in his apartment, seated in a mechanical chair with a pig mask strapped to her head. The walls were covered in photographs with the phrase, "See what I see," painted above them. At gunpoint, he demanded she remove the mask, only to realize she was chained and begging for help.
I tell you to walk away.
But he refused. When Rigg removed the mask, he unknowingly triggered the trap. In agony, Brenda shouted that the combination was written on the gears. Rigg searched for something to cut her hair but found his kitchen stripped of knives, replaced with a taunting note. Panicked, he tried shooting the gearbox, but the trap kept running. At the last moment, he spotted the combination, 647, and freed her. Severely injured, Brenda was told to stay put, but when left alone, she discovered a knife hidden beneath the TV. When Rigg returned, she attacked him, revealing through her actions that she had been instructed to kill him. In the struggle, Rigg overpowered her, pulling her scalp back further and slamming her into a mirror. Brenda bled to death from her injuries. A tape recorder chained to her hand revealed the truth. Brenda had been both a test for herself and a test for Rigg, given the choice to kill him or not. Addison Corday. Addison's desperation finally got the better of her. Barely able to stand as the nerve gas drained her strength, she staggered into a room dominated by a giant glass box hanging from chains. Inside, taunting her like the world's cruelest prize machine, was the thing she needed most. A syringe filled with antidote. There was even an envelope with a cassette waiting, but Addison wasn't in the mood for story time. She actually managed to grab the syringe, only for the top to snap off, spilling the antidote. Survival, wasted in seconds. Panic set in and logic went out the window. Addison shoved her other arm into the second hole only to realize too late the trap's trick. Razor blades lined the slots. Easy in, impossible out. Her arms were locked in place, bleeding as she screamed for help. Eventually her cries drew Xavier. For a second, hope flickered. Then reality hit. Xavier wasn't there to save anyone. He coldly lifted her hair, checked the back of her neck for her number, 9, and walked out without a second thought. Alone, trapped, and bleeding out, Addison's screams slowly weakened, fading into silence. Trevor. Trevor's trap began in absolute terror. He woke in pitch blackness only to realize his eyelids weren't shut by choice. They'd been sewn closed. Blind and panicking, he tugged at the chain around his neck and stumbled another prisoner, Art Blank.
Talk to me! What are you doing?
But while Trevor couldn't see, Art couldn't speak. His mouth crudely stitched shut. Jigsaw had really nailed the theme here. 2 men, chained together, doomed to miscommunicate like the world's worst trust exercise. Trevor begged for answers, growing frantic when Art's muffled grunts gave him nothing. Flailing, he stumbled over a crate of tools and started hurling them blindly across the room. One of them, a small axe, just happened to land next to Art, a helpful delivery if a little unintentional. Then Trevor yanked the chain, setting off a hidden winch that began dragging them both toward a roaring device in the center of the mausoleum. Survival suddenly had a timer. Trevor swung a hook wildly, desperate to keep Art away. But Art saw the real prize. The key fastened to the back of Trevor's collar. Weapon in hand, he fought forward, determined to reach it. The two clashed in a brutal, chaotic brawl, chains whipping, hooks swinging, blows landing in blind fury. In the end, sightless panic was no match for ruthless clarity. Art dodged Trevor's frantic strikes, knocked him down, and grabbed a hammer. With savage force, he brought it down again and again on Trevor's skull until he stopped moving. With Trevor gone, Art claimed the key, but at a brutal, bloody cost. Jonas Singer. Jonas stumbled back into the starting room, every step heavier as the nerve gas tore him down. Blood dripped from his mouth, each cough a reminder that time wasn't on his side. There he found Xavier, hunched over Gus's corpse like a kid who'd already peeked at his Christmas present. He'd discovered the number carved into Gus's neck, one piece of the code for the safe.
But we can come together and figure out who's doing this to us.
Jonas tried the human approach, appealing to Xavier's better nature. Unfortunately, Xavier didn't have one. He confessed his own fears, admitting enemies would target his family if he didn't make it out. But Xavier wasn't interested in sympathy.
You understand?
No.
Teamwork wasn't part of his vocabulary. Instead, he demanded Jonas turn around so he could read his number. Jonas refused. Xavier's response? Pull a knife. Jonas even landed a brutal kick to Xavier's face, nearly tipping the balance. But the gas was winning the real battle, stripping away his strength. That's when Xavier reached for his favorite accessory, a nail-studded bat. With one vicious swing, he brought it crashing into Jonas's skull. Jonas staggered, blood pouring, his mouth working to form words that never came. He collapsed at Xavier's feet, silenced for good. Hank. William's trial began with sheer panic. Strapped into a contraption in an abandoned zoo, he watched as a TV flickered on, and the face of John Kramer appeared. William recognized him, a man whose request for life-saving coverage his company had once denied.
When faced with death, who should live?
Now, John accused him of playing God with people's lives, condemning the sick to die, and declared that William would have to face 4 brutal tests if he wanted to see his family again. The first test revealed another prisoner, Hank, a man with a lifetime of health issues worsened by his smoking habit. Both men were fitted with chest clamps that tightened with every breath. The rules were simple and sadistic. The one who held out the longest lived. The other would be crushed like an empty soda can. When the game began, William tried to stay calm, holding his breath as long as he could. Hank, however, was at a disadvantage. Years of smoking caught up to him. His lungs burned almost instantly, forcing him to gasp and triggering the machine. With each breath, the clamps pressed harder, ribs creaking under the pressure. Hank fought to resist, but panic and pain overtook him. His breaths came faster, ragged, until finally the device clamped shut completely. His chest collapsed in a sickening crunch, blood spurting from his mouth as his body went limp. William was left gasping, shaken, but alive. His first test was over. For Hank, it was the last. His lifetime of bad choices ending not with cancer, but with steel. Paul Leahy. Paul's test was one of Jigsaw's nastier home improvement projects. He woke up in a dingy cellar, the kind of place you'd expect mold, not motivational tapes. But instead, he got that distorted voice reminding him of his failed suicide attempt, basically accusing him of being bad at both living and dying. Talk about tough love.
But if you want to live, you'll have to cut yourself again.
The rules were simple in the worst way. If Paul really wanted to die, he could just sit tight. But if he wanted to live, he had 2 hours to crawl through. Naked, because apparently Jigsaw believed clothes would make it too easy. Paul, bleeding optimism and soon just bleeding in general, threw himself into the maze. Every desperate move drove the blades deeper. Still, he clawed forward, but inches from escape, his body gave out. Major blood vessels shredded, including his femoral artery, basically nature's off switch. He collapsed, lost to blood loss, while Jigsaw's sadistic design worked exactly as intended. A slow, agonizing death dressed up as a choice. Jeff Denlon. Amanda was dead, John Kramer's throat was cut, and Lynn's collar had already claimed her life. Trapped inside, Jeff could do nothing to save his daughter Corbett. That's when the door creaked open, and in stepped Special Agent Peter Strom, still chasing the ghost of Detective Rigg.
It's my daughter! You
That single, panicked moment sealed his fate. Strom, convinced Jeff was about to fire, pulled the trigger first. The shot dropped Jeff instantly, his desperate questions cut off mid-breath.